Welcome to the Wolf Connection podcast. I'm your host, John Kalfa. Let's talk about some wolves. Very excited to have with myself and Steven today, joining us from Blair County, Idaho. She is the chair of the Wood River Wolf Project. Sarah Michael, it is a pleasure to have you with us today, and we have a lot to talk about in regards to Idaho wolves. Thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing?
Doing well. I'm in Blaine County, Idaho. So just make note of that, which is home to the famous ski resort, Sun Valley. We are doing well. We have had an escalation on Idaho's war on wolves. And with the recent passage of a bill, SB 1211, which has a goal of killing 90% of wolves in Idaho. The bill was sponsored by the Idaho Trappers Association, the Idaho Cattlemen's Association, the Idaho Sheep Producers, and within 2 weeks, it was introduced and sent to the governor's desk.
So I want to ask this. What events led up to the escalation to where the bill was drafted and, like you said, such a quick turnaround and response by the governor in 2 weeks? What were the events that led up to this bill being drafted, written, and then signed by the governor?
It was a concerted effort. A bill had been introduced 6 weeks before, and the committee chair decided not to move forward with that particular bill. And from my understanding, the anti-wolf groups just went into total lobby mode. And because the earlier bill was not given a hearing, they decided to introduce this bill and make an extra effort to get it passed. Similarly, in Montana, similar bills have been introduced, a little bit different, but they had they had the Farm Bureau, they had the cattlemen and the sheep producers on board, and were able to get it through. The facts are that in Idaho, there've only been, in the last 3 years, 110, 115 sheep and cattle total that have been killed by wolves. There's a very robust fund. We have a wolf control board that pays out to ranchers and sheepmen for their losses. And so 110, 115 livestock out of 2.73 million animals in the state. And what's so disappointing about this is that Idaho has never spent a dime on non-lethal controls or kind of program the Wood River Wolf Project manages, where we work with sheep producers, 5 sheep producers that run 16 to 20,000 sheep through our county, and to prevent livestock depredation. Not one state program, no dollars go towards this kind of non-lethal prevention. So that was very disappointing to us. No conversation with hunter groups. The Idaho Fish and Game opposed it. Hunter groups opposed to it. Wildlife biologists opposed the bill. But, at the end of the day, the governor's a sheep rancher, and they held sway.
Now, does it sound like the goal in the end is to start sort of this culture of aggressive wolf hunting to the point where they bring the numbers down to basically that bare minimum that is acceptable per the original proposal, I guess, of what is successful reintroduction? I thought it was 150 or something like that. Does it seem like that's really the end goal, just to bring it down to the bare minimum?
That's what the state management plan has identified. We have 20,000 black bears in the state. We have 3,000 mountain lions
Mm.
and 1,500 wolves. And so the their stated goal is we want to get to that 150 population. So now there'll be year-round hunting, there'll be year-round trapping, killing of pups in their dens. No other species, predator species in Idaho, has been targeted like the wolves. And
Yeah.
it's going back 100 years of wolf eradication that the wolf wars of 100 years ago are now happening in Idaho.
I think my next question would be, if there are groups on the opposing side of this bill, there are hunters, there are livestock individuals, you yourself and Suzanne Asha Stone run the Wood River Wolf Project that has been successful with sheep and wolf coexistence. Why has there been no effort to try out these non-lethal methods and go straight to a hugely lethal and on a large scale like this?
It's become a political issue. It's happening in Montana. Montana has a large coalition. The Western Landowners Alliance is a large coalition of ranchers that are working on conflict resolution. But Montana has passed. So did they consult with the coalition that's dealing with conflict, livestock predator coalition, management? No,
Mm-hmm.
they haven't. So in Idaho, there's never really been an interest by legislators or the Wolf Control Board or the livestock organizations to improve programs or support. We're unique.
Mm-hmm.
We're unique in Blaine County there in the sense that we've had a sheep herding tradition in this valley since the 1880s and 90s. We have a festival honoring that tradition, the trailing of the sheep. Every October, 1,000 head of sheep go through Ketchum, Idaho, in honor of that tradition. At the same time, we are a resort community. We have people that are in the backcountry on trails, mountain bikes,
Mm-hmm.
and our state senator, our Democratic state senator, Michelle Stenick, got her dog in January, this past January 2nd, caught in a wolf trap.
Wow.
In another county. She was out walking on a county road. It was snow covered.
Mm.
And her dog was caught in this wolf trap. And needless to say, she broke her thumb.
Oh.
Dog out of
Oh no.
wolf trap. And if it hadn't been for two really burly guys coming along, her dog would have died.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was hypothermic and shock. She dislocated her thumb. And And the people, our residents here in Blaine County, were up in arms and contacted the Fish and Game to keep wolf trapping out of our county. We were successful in March. Fish and Game said, no, we shouldn't have wolf trapping in that area of Idaho. There's just too many people on skis and snowshoes and who are on mountain bikes and are hiking. And that sparked, I think, part of the motivation to get this bill passed, because this one little area in Idaho where we are working on coexistence was successful in getting the Fish and Game Commission to act in our behalf and keep wolf trapping and snaring out of our county. So my sense is that they wanted to make sure that they had the last word, and the passage of this bill certainly has given them the last word.
I don't know. It just feels like, why wouldn't they want to keep this a little bit more conservative, or at least a lot less noticeable to pro-wolf organizations? I mean, to come out and say we want to get rid of 90% of the wolf numbers is just begging for attention. And I just feel as though there's some amount of diminishing returns to an initiative that's this aggressive, because isn't there just that possibility that the hunt will be so aggressive and the numbers will be reduced so aggressively that it will just be a springboard for special protections, or at least bringing them below that 150 number, in which then they would have to be back, I would assume, back on the ESA at least temporarily while the numbers rebounded. It just seems like it seems like maybe it won't help them in the long run, but I don't know.
Well, I think that is the push now, by the major wolf and environmental groups to petition on the relisting of wolves in Idaho, because, as I said, we have 20,000 black bears. We have 3,000 mountain lions. And the state is spending $800,000 a year taking game money to compensate these ranchers, and federal money.
Right.
That the push now is that to try to get the wolves relisted. It is so extreme.
And as far as I know, wolf hunting is very hard. It's one of the harder big game species to hunt. Do you think that this 90% reduction will be gradual for that reason? Because they can be in some pretty tough country, and they can take, I'm sure, a very long time to master that type of hunting. I was listening to a podcast the other day about this topic, and the guy hosting it was just talking about the success rates of wolf hunters. I mean, some people have, applied for 56 or more tags in their life and killed maybe 2 wolves. So I wonder if this will happen more gradually than we think, or do you think it's going to happen? It's going to be like an explosive reaction where this 90% reduction will happen very quickly?
No, I mean, Idaho's got more roadless areas, wilderness areas in the lower 40 states, 49 states. So it's the church, the Boulder White Cloud Wilderness is Sawtooth. Where we are in Blaine County, we are surrounded by 6 mountain ranges, much of it roadless. And so it will be tough. But when you look at the demographics coming into Idaho, they want to see wildlife.
Mm-hmm.
We organized against wolf trapping. The Sun Valley Board of Realtors, the Sun Valley Economic Development, our recreation community, our retail stores, all petitioned the Idaho Fish and Game. And in the long run, it is going to be the changing population. It's going to be the Idaho Department of Parks and Rec. It's going to be the Idaho Tourism Council that the long game strategy on a balance of coexistence, wanting to see wildlife, has to be with these other partners, because ranching is important. Sheep, cattle, and sheep are important. But in the long run, wildlife, Idaho needs to get into the 21st century with wildlife management. And those are the partners that I think a number of us hope to be engaging in this conversation in the long run.
Has there been, when we've spoken to other individuals on the podcast, when we just spoke to a bunch of Wisconsin people when they had their wolf hunt earlier this year, it seems as though there's this shift also where individuals who hunt are fearing that there's not as many ungulates on the ranges that used to be, elk, deer, things of that sort. Is that something that is factored into this? And not knowing Idaho's wildlife as well as I'm sure you do, is that something that has played into this as well? Because it seems as though that it's a double, it's ranching community and it's also hunting community. So is that something also that was factored in as to why they wanted this to be passed or why they pushed so hard for this bill?
This has been, so the elk population and the trappers and the people who want to kill wolves always say, oh, the elk population,
Mm-hmm.
being decimated. Idaho's had record elk populations. You know what the problem is? They're harder to hunt because they're moving differently.
Right.
On March 14th, headline, Fish and Game killed 60 elk in 2020 because they were eating hay. And they $1 million less in paying ranchers for the fact the elk were eating their hay.
Incredible.
You know, the argument of the poor elk population, we have records. At elk in Idaho.
When this comes to pass, what are the things that you are doing? And we're going to go back and forth inside the bill, different things that I see. But I want to get your perspective too about what the overall community outlook has been, or what the people have been saying. Because when we started this conversation, you were right on it that there are multiple groups on the anti-bill side that this is too much to the extreme. So how is the public handling this passage of this bill and the reasons as to why it goes to the extreme that it does?
Well, I can only speak for the Wood River Wolf Project. You know, part of our strategy is if we know where the wolves are, when these 16,000 sheep come into our county, 16 to 20,000 sheep, if we know where the wolves are, then we can alert sheep herders and go and provide resources to protect the sheep. Now, if that information is public, it's going to be triggering hunters out that will try to get there before we are able to deflect the sheep through noise, through noise and human presence and flashing lights. That is our goal, to keep the wolves away from sheep. How public do we want to make this information? Because it will, the sheep herders go with their sheep wagon on roads and graze in areas that are close to roads. And for us, we're tiptoeing, we're on this, walking this tightrope of letting, folks know we need to be out with these bands of sheep. And in the meantime, the wolf hunting population is going to be tracking our movements and working their underground networks to get there so they can shoot the wolves in advance. So it's quite we're really quite uncomfortable this year. We have never had this level of concern about working with the sheep herds and the bands and the herders because of this new legislation and scrutiny by the wolf hunting community.
So what do you think it's going to take in a state like Idaho? I mean, or Wisconsin, for example, or even Colorado, to be honest. I mean, they voted it in here, the reintroduction, but there's still a lot of disagreement. But what do you think it's going to take to get everyone on the same page in a state like Idaho about coexisting with wolves?
Well, we've been the best kept secret for 13 years.
Mm-hmm.
We've just gone out and done our job and haven't really reached out to expanded beyond Blaine County. And I think it's important that we work with the ranchers outside of Blaine County that are interested, if we can develop the resources and educate them about the technique, because there are pockets of ranchers all over the state. There are pockets of ranchers all over Montana, Wyoming that want to coexist. And so when the state is only funding programs of killing wolves, and we are scrambling to get a nickel and a dime here for existence program, we're going to be seeking more federal funds for our efforts and try to get more ranchers involved in the non-lethal, because it works. It works. Sometimes it doesn't work. When it doesn't work, then there's going to have to be some action, probably lethal action, if you can't stop chronic depredation. But it works well, and we've got research that shows that it's a pretty effective. The program can be effective.
The common theme is that wolves are destroying the ranching industry, which it is definitely a scary thing. And I think we should all heed that warning, and because we have to protect ranchers to some degree as well. They do help to protect our wild spaces, and not just to mention provide goods and services. But do you think that saying simply this is about saving the ranching community, and that it sort of has to do with monetary value, is the whole story, or is some amount of this just a political pushback from rural communities that feel like they haven't been heard lately?
Well, I think that's a really good point. And in the conversations that between ranchers, elsewhere, and you've listened to the podcast too, that there is a uh, the urban rural divide, and I I I think that's an excellent point. How do we? Part of what we see happening here when you have 16,000 to 20,000 sheep going through a very highly recreated area. It's it's probably it's growing more and more, and that the recreationists resent the sheep, resent the livestock guardian dogs that are very threatening,
Mm.
and we are going to the trailheads now this summer with information about why the sheep are here and how to navigate a band of sheep when you're on a mountain bike, how to navigate a livestock guardian dog. And because there needs to be coexistence with livestock
Right.
as well as coexistence with wolves. But the I our fish and game commissioner, one of the reasons that he supported keeping trapping and snaring out of this county, his he had two of his dogs. It was in a coyote trap, but he had two of his bird dogs caught in a trap. So he understands when you have these huge wolf traps, and you have a child or a dog or an adult getting caught in one,
Mm.
it scares the heck out of people.
Yeah. Is the argument that trapping is really the most efficient way to catch wolves? Is that
Definitely
yeah.
easier to trap, and particularly if they're using scented traps like they do for coyotes. I don't know if this bill, they keep saying, well, poison's not going to be allowed, but baiting traps, snares, and if they start to use poison, where it's going to be mayhem out there.
Isn't that the fear? I mean, you said it before. Isn't the fear, and we've had a couple of conversations with this already, with not only pets and other species getting caught in these traps, you have the human element as well, where if you're going on a trailhead and you're not going to see these snares or these traps, there has been human injury that I've read about. There have been they set a bunch of traps along the road and they end up getting all number of different types of species, whether it's fox or coyote or bear sometimes to a degree, or rabbits. And so it seems as though when you throw a lot of it out there, just hoping to get as many wolves as possible, the reverse reaction and the reverse happens, and you're only hurting the other species as well when you're doing this.
So the Idaho Fish and Game did a study of the how many other species, the unintended consequences of wolf trapping, and their report showed that 4% of the animals caught in the wolf traps are not wolves. They're other fawns. They're I think in one case a wolverine, and and that's now now that information, they may not be doing that study anymore because it's so uh, compromising to the goals. Couple of things I think is important, that these species, um, this trapping, the trappers will tell you it's easy to get out of a wolf trap. What they don't tell you is that you have to have special tools.
Yeah.
The Idaho Fish and Game actually gives courses to the public how to extricate yourself or your dog from a wolf trap. Now tell me, should the public have to carry a training by Idaho Fish and Game? Uh, last year, the Suzanne Stone and Living with Wolves, our advocacy groups here, asked the Fish and Game to require trappers to post areas where their traps are, and to require them to go off the trails by 25 feet. And they wouldn't do it. So how is the Idaho Fish and Game protecting the public when they're not requiring any kind of notice or setbacks from trails for wolf traps? This is crazy. This is 18th century or 19th century. This is management of wildlife.
Mm-hmm.
And it's inhumane. And the fact is that, there's got to be some balance.
Yeah, there has to be balance. And I'm looking at a particular part in the in 1211 in the bill here. And if you can expand on this, because I see that the wolf trapping season, this is whatever, line 30, or it's on page 3. The wolf trapping season shall be open all year round on all private property as long as individuals are in compliance with the permission requirements contained in section 36-1603. So does this mean that what is the rule on public land then? And what is the balance that's being struck here? Because between private and public land, and how this is going to interchange with this?
So on the public land trapping is, they keep expanding it. So I know that they have shut down trapping during the summer when the livestock are going on public lands because they don't want to get sheep and cattle and livestock guardian dogs in the trap. But from November to about May, it's or mid-October to May, it's open season on public lands, trapping and snaring. Hunting is now 11 months out of the year. The only time that they can't hunt on public lands is during July. And we have students out with cameras trying to find out where the wolves are and to do howling. Now that hunting is allowed 11 months out of the year, we worry about howling surveys because they could get shot.
Yeah.
Of hunters looking for wolves. I think the fact that we work primarily with sheep, that far more sheep get killed by coyotes, that have the sheep producers go after the measly, 1,500 wolves when there are so few depredations, at least when you do non-lethal. It's just, to us, I think it's more of a culture war and just the long history of hatred of wolves and what the federal government did to Idaho by reintroducing them 25 years ago.
Is that where you believe a lot of this stems from? It's really a private citizens versus the government, and like you said, what they did? Or is there something that goes back even further than the reintroduction as to why there's this belief that wolves should be, I don't know if everyone believes they should be eradicated from Idaho again, or if it's just they want them at such a low number that it almost as if they're non-existent?
I think it's culturally goes back, 150 years. We got rid of the Idaho ranchers, got rid of wolves, in the 100 years ago, and it's just one more, it's one more thing. I think, Stephen, you said that, the economic viability of ranching the sheep ranchers have had a heck of a time with
Mm.
prices because most of their market is cruise ships. Well, you know how
Hmm.
much demand there is from cruise ships now for lamb.
Mm.
And I think they're record prices for beef, but it's still a hard scrabble life. And it's just one more thing that makes it hard for them. And the wolf is an easy target. Idaho, anyway, for the legislature.
I feel though that and Stephen and I have used this phrase, I think more often than not, is that there seems to be though this radical middle that should be able to be found. That there are people on both ends of the spectrum, especially in this debate and a lot of the other states that we've seen, that you're going to have the pro-wolf camp and the anti-wolf camp. But it seems as though, especially with the individuals that we've spoken to, that there is a middle ground that can be reached on certain things. Wood River Wolf Project is a perfect example. We spoke with Karen Vardaman, who is also doing coexistence ranching out west. So is there a way, and I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, I believe there's a meeting with the residents of Idaho, I believe coming up this weekend, to discuss Bill 1211 and what the impacts are going to be. Is there any way that we can have a radical middle there in Idaho where some of the ranching community that has seen these coexistence measures work try to influence the others? It seems like the small minority that are having this difficulty wrapping their head around coexistence with this particular predator.
I would say that there's more visible engagement in Montana through the Western Landowners Alliance on both wolves and grizzly bears. And they are trying to, that is the radical middle, I think, as far as just, and the Wood River Wolf Project. We are just trying to keep sheep and wolves alive. It's a win-win for everyone. And that's the radical middle. It's happening in ranches in Montana and ranches in Wyoming. We're trying the best we can. But the governor of Montana wants to see wolves trapped. He's a former wolf trapper. Our governor is a sheep rancher, comes from a sheep ranching heritage. So we just have to keep doing our job, trying to keep sheep and wolves apart and keep them both alive for the time being. And the legislature is going to do what they're going to do. And we're going to have to navigate in between that.
What kind of problems are going to present themselves with the fact that, and with maybe the subtle differences of legislation versus regulation? Because I'd assume that regulation is a little bit more flexible, whereas legislation isn't.
Well, and that's why sportsman groups and wildlife biologists have said, let's have the science or the Idaho Fish and Game manage wolves, because it is more nimble.
Mm-hmm.
Legislation, but you're stuck with legislation, and we're going to be stuck with that legislation for a long time.
And I was assuming that wildlife is static, and it's not. It changes year to year, and you would just think that we would want to regulate it for that reason, to accommodate for the wild changes that are happening, much faster now than in the past, I think, with climate changes. And
well, we'll see when if the state of Idaho and the other states start losing federal money, wildlife they get a lot of, and and they find them not in compliance with these species, management of these species, whether or not, whether or not there'll be a more dialogue.
Yeah, because it seems like there's going to be an ecological consequence to this if this hits the 90% threshold, because you are taking out a predator that really helps balance the ecosystem there. I know that you have the mountain lions and the bears as well, but to have that balance of predator prey and having that coexistence with the livestock, it really seems that this swing of the pendulum in the extreme direction could not only hurt, like you said, the groups that are vying on either side, but also ecologically could take a toll for Idaho as well.
Well, that was shown in Yellowstone when they reintroduced the wolves. Now they have a stable elk herd. They have a stable wolf pack generally, and the rivers, the riparian areas have grown back. Beavers have come back. Coyotes have been pushed out, so that's allowed more rodents and the prey for eagles and beaver, and then the willows allowing beaver dams. I don't know that we really think about that. The groups in this conversation don't really think about. Don't really look at that as a benefit. I mean, the ones who want more wolves killed.
When you're talking about when you have these, what kind of information is your group, and yourself included, are you trying to give to the public, particularly on this issue, but also, like you said before, with the sheep on the trailheads? You're trying to inform the public about ways that you can coexist with, sheep and livestock that are moving through these trails. What sort of information are you all putting out to the public so that they can have the best gauge of what this bill actually does and how it's going to affect them?
I think for at least 2021, the bill will not impact them, at least for the next, for the near term. We're just not sure how it's going to be implemented. Most of Blaine County is private lands. We're public lands, 69%. And the year-round trapping and snaring on private lands will affect a part of the county that's not in the central recreation zone. But we're just not sure. We're not sure if that's going to force the Idaho Fish and Game Commission to open up wolf trapping on public lands throughout the county. Throughout the area. It's an unknown for us right now. But I think the bottom line is our economy and the voices who spoke up for our economy here, the realtors, the Economic Development or Tourism Council, this is the coalition that needs to enter the dialogue in McCall, Idaho, in Coeur d'Alene, in Teton County, Idaho, where recreation and tourism are the economic drivers. And starting coexistence programs there to protect both livestock and the wolves, I think, will potentially over a period of time have a seat at the table, but because they are economic drivers.
Mm-hmm. So 1211, SB 1211 removes, most regulations all the seasons and bag limits for wolf harvest, and provides that additional 190,000 per year towards hiring contractors to kill wolves as well. Are there any other big game species? I'm sure that's not too far off the map in terms of like nuisance animals, maybe groundhogs or vermin of some kind. But are there any other big game species where that kind of profile of no seasons, no bag limits, and this what seems like, I mean, I don't know, but what seems like a substantial amount of money to contractors, is that normal for any other species, or has that been seen in recent history for any other big game species?
The fishing game really opened up uh, mountain lion hunting this year, but they don't get bounties.
Hmm.
So only the wolf hunters get a bounty and have unlimited. They have quotas. They've for mountain lions. They've really loosened the quotas, but no other species has a bounty on it like wolves do, and allow contractors to come in and take out wolf packs in the rough areas of Sublette County in Wyoming. I talked to a rancher there the other day, and she said that there's no way that the wolves just get smarter and smarter, but the wolf pack structure is so important. She has a wolf pack there who leave her cattle and sheep alone. But then, there'll be another, when the wolf structures from other areas to get taken out, then you have lone wolves coming in, and it's no end of problems. So, but here, the wolves get smarter and smarter, and we're not sure if it's going to help us with coexistence when these 16 to 20,000 sheep come through. We're just not sure if by being hunted so hard, they'll really stay away from the sheep herders and the sheep. To be continued.
Yeah, we've heard that before, that potentially, again, another diminishing return scenario where hunting them too aggressively doesn't allow for that transmission of ancestral knowledge that could potentially keep them hunting appropriate prey.
There's been studies done, and in Yellowstone, the packs, they tend to attack each other to get territory, and that's the biggest challenge for the wolves there, and is that territorial. But we have people here in our county that would like. We've got 1.6 million acres of, so we're bigger than the state of New Jersey or Delaware.
Wow.
We could become a wolf sanctuary. We are a dark sky preserve, where in central Idaho, our county is part of a dark sky preserve because we have regulations of downcast lighting. And we could become a wolf preserve sanctuary, but and that would be an interesting experiment.
Yeah, I just wonder if why wouldn't there be other ideas such as that to explore, or relocate some of the wolves, somewhere to a place where they can live and thrive, as opposed to taking them out. It just seems like there are more options than just the most extreme. And like I talk about like I said before, with the radical middle, is that both sides need to be heard in this conversation, and that's what Stephen and I try and do. But it just seems like the conversation was really taken over by one side, and there wasn't really a discussion at the table. It didn't seem that way from the outside looking in.
We had a very unusual year in Idaho with the kind of legislation, the kind of legislation that was passed. But I think, Steve, in Colorado, you had the opportunity before the reintroduction, have your wolf advocacy groups build coalitions with your chambers of commerce, with your people, the Realtors Association, with the people who are the economic drivers in Colorado is so different than Idaho. And building those coalitions early will make a huge difference. If the wolf advocacy groups just talk to themselves and just talk to the ranchers and we get become isolated in our coalitions and harden in these opposite sides, we are not going to see coexistence. And I think you have a chance to really do a lot more coalition building and dialogue.
Yeah.
We're
trying.
With your legislature, your fishing game, and all the people who care. You care about wolves and who care about livestock. I think the culture in Colorado could really show the way. Idaho is not going to be there for a long time, but Colorado can be a model of dialogue and tolerance and dealing with predation and balancing economics between livestock, wolves, tourism.
Very pointed words. Sarah, where can people go to engage in this conversation that's happening in Idaho? Where can they find any of the information that you and the Wood River Wolf Project is talking about this? Where can they go?
So the Wood River Wolf Project, we have a website, the Wood River Wolf Project. Suzanne Stone's International Wildlife Coexistence Network is a good resource. Living with Wolves, they've been the number one educator that just focuses on wolves and biology and science, and their blog is excellent. And the Western Watersheds following this issue very closely. Center for Biological Diversity. For coexistence, the Wood River Wolf Project techniques, we've got information, International Wildlife Coexistence Network. But for the advocacy and leadership on 1211, I think some of these other groups are are clearly leading on legal and petitions. I've got Wood River Wolf Project this summer has to focus on keeping wolves out of trouble, keeping them from being killed. And so we'll be working on our coexistence this summer. Non-lethal.
Non-lethal, yeah. No, it's been fascinating to speak to Suzanne and now yourself, and you're both giants in Idaho, and we can't thank you enough for just explaining the bill itself and going into this discussion with us, because it's, as an outsider's perspective, it's really nice to get clarity on what's really, what could potentially happen there. And that's huge for us to hear from someone that's literally boots on the ground in Idaho. So it's great to have this conversation with you. Thank you for sharing the information. It's great.
Thank you.
Wait, we need our last question, John.
I know. Yeah. My final question that I ask all of our guests, Sarah, is when you hear the word wolf, what is something that comes to your mind?
A beautiful wild being that shows wilderness and a whole ecosystem.
I love that.
Love it.
Thank you so Sarah Michael, thank you so much for joining us. Definitely check out Wood River Wolf Project on the web, and you can see Sarah's bio there. They're doing some wonderful work, so definitely check them out. Howls to all of you out there, and Stephen and I will be with you next time. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Looking to support Wolf Connection or sponsor one of the wolves in our pack? Just go to wolfconnection.org, click on the Donate tab, and find out more information.